Alright, so I don't really have a lot of videos on my mind right now. Usually I have 3 or 4 that I really want to do. But I've pretty much got everything out of my system, I believe. Except for this one. Or maybe 2. 1 or 2. That's the thing. Sometimes I can't think of what I want to do. Sometimes I think I have nothing to do. And then I think of one thing, and then I think of that one thing, and then that leads to another thing, and then before you know it, I have 5 or 6 things. So, but anyway, at the moment, I really don't feel like I have too much to talk about it, except for that one thing, and then the one thing reminded me of a second thing. And that might be why, right there. I can't think of anything because I'm tired. That might have a lot to do with it, actually. Like in the morning when it's time to wake up, I can't think of anything in the world that I feel like doing except sleeping. And then at 11 o'clock at night, I have 12 things that are imperative, that are urgent, that must be done that night. It's very frustrating. Anyway, so I made a extreme claim in a previous video some time ago about something that my preacher said, and I want to try to flesh out that extreme claim. I want to try to put some underpinning to it so that it's not just hanging out there unsupported. It's one thing to say something extreme with no support, and it's quite another thing to say something extreme with support, I believe. So I would prefer to say things that have support, especially extreme things. So the extreme thing was that he said that, let's see. Now, it's not, I don't know the exact words, so as a consequence of that, what is going to come across is my interpretation of what he said. That's necessarily true if I cannot remember the exact words, right? But it's not that obscure, it's not that remote. I mean, we hear it everywhere, right? Constantly, 24/7, 7 days a week, 52 weeks, you constantly, over and over. White people are evil, 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 white people are racist, white people oppress black people, white people, white people, white people, white people, white people. Gotta punish the white people, gotta, give the white people what they deserve, gotta take it from the white people, gotta, constantly, right? And the thing that I said that I thought was a little bit extreme was that but let me go back. So he was on this kick about how white people have to pay for what they did to the black people, and for slavery, basically, and then segregation, and all the leadership of my church, these big Democrats. So they never acknowledged the fact that it was the Democrats that practiced and defended and went to war over the cause of slavery. It was the Democrats in the South that practiced segregation, and George C. Wallace stood up in the school, the entranceway to the school to protest, or not even to protest, because he was the governor. Governors don't protest; they what would you call it? Enforce, yeah. Or they either enforce or they see. I'm tired. I can't think of words. They either enforce or they stall. Not stall, but whatever the opposite of enforce. They get in the way of, right? What do you call it in Congress when a bunch of guys, they don't let anything get done? Stalwart? No, it's not stalwart. It's stall, but no, it's not stall. It's there's a word. I can't think of it. But anyway, so they stand up and they prevent something from getting done. Blockade. It's not blockade, but it's like that. It's like a blockade. So they never acknowledge that, of course. It's just white people. It's like Democrats were white, largely, not exclusively, obviously, but they were white. So, but they're not going to take it upon themselves to say, hey, it was us, it was our party that practiced all this racism. No, they're going to say it was all of us, right? It's like, well, and I'm over here, I'm going, hey, don't pull me into your mess. I got nothing to do with I got nothing to do with your mess. I know misery loves company, but don't pull me into this. I don't want to get down in the sewer with you, But that's the way they do it. I mean, it's just like, it's the same thing as Adam and Eve, right? God comes to Adam and says, what's this? And Adam's like, hey, it wasn't me, it was you, God, because you put this woman here with me, right? So Adam's like, it's not me, it's all of us. And by all of us, I mean you and her, and I'm secondary. So, anyway, that's what it's like. So what am I saying here? I said it was diabolical. So he was on that kick. Now, the whole white people are evil kick. And obviously I'm not having it, for one really explicit reason, which I'll get to eventually if I don't ramble off into the ether somewhere and get distracted onto something else. But yeah, obviously I'm not having it. So you get into like the actual percentage of Americans that had slaves. It was like 2%, and it was always the rich. So it's just the same old story over and over and over again. It's all of human conflict, like 99% or 90%, 90 to 99% of all human conflict is the rich against the poor, the rich against the poor, the rich against the poor. It's not the black against the whites or the Shiites against the Sunni or the this. It's the rich against the poor. Now the rich, they don't work, right? And by rich, I don't mean somebody that started a company and he has $50 million in the bank or $300 million. I don't mean that kind of rich. That's rich, but it's not the kind I'm talking about the really rich. I'm talking about the people that have never worked a day in their lives because, grandpa was a billionaire and, grandpa, made all the money and your father was born wealthy, so he never worked, and then you were born wealthy and you never worked. And so it's like you're living in a disconnected world compared to everybody else. I mean, you basically you live in a different world. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like Victor Hugo said: austerity creates men, and prosperity creates monsters. Right? So there is kind of a principle there. Like all principles, none of them are 100%, but the principle is the principle, the tendency is the tendency, the proclivity is the proclivity, even if it's not absolute. It is a proclivity among the privileged to become evil and corrupt. Like I said, I might ramble off into the ether, and here's an example. I'm going to ramble off into something here. My personal theory on that is that the elite's bias, or loathing, or what's the word? See, I'm having trouble with words again. Their disdain. I got it. That is the actual word I was looking for. The disdain they have for the non-elite, right? I believe is the result of envy. In other words, it's the result of the elite's envy of the non-elite, because the elite have literally everything. Thing being the operative term there. They have literally everything, right? I mean, there's literally nothing that they cannot have. These guys have their own helipads, their own helicopters. They have their own submarines. Believe it or not, they do manufacture and sell submarines for individuals. Excuse me. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you have $0, in the bank, or $5, or $5 is roughly the equivalent of zero, right? If you have $30, that's roughly the equivalent of zero. Excuse me. If you have a small amount of money in the bank, well, first of all, you have a bank account, so that's something. Some people don't have that and have no way to get that. Okay. But then you go from having zero to having 500, right? Small opportunities present themselves because you go from having 0 to 500. Maybe the bank offers you some type of a credit card or something, some small line of credit which you could not get with $30 in the bank. But then you go from 500 to 5,000. Well, when you go from 500 to 5,000, especially if you have 5,000 in the bank for some period of time, say 2 or 3 years, well, more opportunities present themselves. And then you go from 5,000 to 50,000. Well, the opportunities just sort of exponentially increase. And I mean opportunities for comfort, opportunities for entertainment, opportunities for investment, just different opportunities, So you just think, you've probably experienced this, and maybe you experienced it and didn't really think about it, but the more you go from having nothing to having more, if you're paying attention, opportunities present themselves the more you get more, right? So imagine going from 5,000 to, for example, maybe 50 billion, which is pretty hard to imagine, right? I mean, that's literally hard to imagine, or 5,000 to 500 million, or 5,000 to 5 million, or 5,000 to 500,000. The opportunities are not only are they going to increase, but they're going to change in nature and quality, right? And so your life is literally going to become a different life, qualitatively. It's going to become a different life. So the envy that I'm making reference here to is that the elite literally have no thing that they cannot have, and they have availed themselves of everything that they could ever want. Now, it's one thing to live your life wanting things and not able to get them. That kind of a life is a life with a certain kind of a quality, and I would say that it's a kind of a life that has aspiration and hope, provided you haven't given up, of course, but most people don't give up. Most people have aspiration and hope for constantly improving the quality of their life. And so if you stop and think about that, that's a pretty healthful state. That's a pretty healthy state to be in. It's comparable or analogous to being hungry. If you've ever eaten when you're not hungry, well then I think that you might agree with me that eating just doesn't have the same pleasure when you're not hungry and you're eating, as compared to eating when you're hungry. And eating when you're extremely hungry has even more pleasure, even greater level of satisfaction, right? So that's what I mean. They have everything, but they have no satisfaction, because the more you have, the less satisfaction everything brings. So, in a way, I believe we actually should have empathy for the elite. We actually should have empathy for people. Well, I mean, we should have empathy for everybody at all times, right? But I'm talking for a specific class of people right now. We actually should have empathy for the elite if we can, in our minds, okay, put ourselves in their shoes to the best of our ability, which is pretty difficult because most of us have never even been near that lifestyle. or that state of living, or that, that state. So it's pretty difficult. But if we try really hard, over an extended period of time, if you try to gain somebody else's point of view, on the initial attempt, you're not really going to get anywhere if you're not familiar with the type of person or the person that you're trying to empathize, that you're trying to step into the shoes of. You're not going to really get it because you don't know. But over time, if you continue to try, you gain little insights here and there. So when I say try, I don't mean just sit in a one session effort for 15 minutes try, or 5 minutes, or 15 seconds. No, I mean like over the course of months and years, if we try to understand what another person's life is like when they are extraordinarily, distantly different from us. If we really try, then over time you gain little insights that become like pieces of a puzzle, and maybe the first insight you gain, it's just a piece and you don't really know what to do with it, and it's just kind of hanging out there with no context, and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't mean very much, but then you gain another piece, and pretty soon some of the pieces, maybe they start to fit together, or at least the pieces start to give the other pieces context, right? So over time, you can empathize with other people in other parallel universes, for lack of a better word. You can almost look at it like that. Like a guy with $50 in a bank, as compared to a guy with $50 million in the bank. They're kind of like living in a parallel universe, because physically they're in the same world, but they're not in the same world. I mean, it's not. There is no easy comparison between their lifestyles. And the comforts and the privileges and the challenges. The comforts and privileges that they enjoy and the challenges that they face. There's no commonality. I forgot what I was saying. So if you try over time, you can learn more and more and more. You can empathize more and more and more and more and more about this. So I think we should empathize with the elite. I've gotten so far off topic, it's ridiculous, man. I told you I was going to ramble off into the ether. If we can empathize with the elite, I think that we can sort of understand that a non-pious or an elite that has a person who's elite like this, that has no faith in God, anything greater than themselves, I might go so far as to say, could become very bitter, right, and very angry, and possibly even very mean, because there's no satisfaction in life despite all that they have. And then they look at other people that have joy, and they have meaning, and they have nothing, and it's like two gears in a machine that just lock up, right? It's like you can't reconcile that in your mind. Like, how does somebody with nothing have so much more joy and happiness than I do? And I have everything, and everything I've ever been told, everything that's ever been intimated, everything that's ever been, what's the word? Everything that has ever been demonstrated, exemplified for me, has told me over and over and over again, and reaffirmed for me over and over and over again, that all of this stuff will make me happy. I've never met anybody in my life, let's just say, for example, that would suggested anything other than the fact that everything that I have would make me happy, and how envious and jealous they are that they have it. If they had it, they would be happy, and that's what they need to be happy. And oh my gosh, it's like, but I don't feel happy. You see how that could drive a person mad? I think it could. I think that we should have empathy for these people. My opinion. It's my personal opinion. And so I think that's how these. I could be totally Pollyanna. I could be totally idealistic and naive here, but I do believe that is in some cases at least, probably many cases, what drives the elite to madness, to have disdain for other people because they don't know what else to do. I mean, the other thing is, and this I think is what really drives it home, is that who are they going to talk to about this? Not many people, right? I mean, a guy with everything, who's he going to tell his problems to? I mean, really, on just an interpersonal level of human contact. Maybe you could hire somebody, a therapist, but that's never the same. You want a real friend. You want real human intimacy. You want real, genuine, just spontaneous, organic human intimacy, I think. I don't have any problem with professional help. I mean, I'm not belittling that or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I don't think that could ever be anybody's total solution, right? Because it doesn't fill that need that I think we all have for just genuine, organic human intimacy. I don't mean romantic intimacy. I just mean like friendship. I just mean like tell somebody what you think and how you feel and what your experiences are, and and have them accept it. They might not understand it, but they just accept it for what it is, and they accept your perspective for what it is, That's all that I mean. And they empathize and they do what they can to help, They don't have to be your savior. They just have to show a willingness to try, basically, at your level of need, not at their proscribed or prescribed. Proscribed is, I think, is prohibit, which is a strange word, I think, proscribed. But at their artificially prescribed level, or within their artificially prescribed framework. Because I think we've all probably experienced the frustration of getting help from somebody that helps us according to the terms that they define our need, right? Isn't that frustrating? I mean, when somebody comes in and I'm here to help you, and it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, that's not what I need. I mean, that's kind of a nice gesture in a way, weird kind of irrational, illogical way that I'm having difficulty understanding or appreciating. I mean, I think you're probably trying, but it's just weird that you're trying to help me in a way that doesn't mean anything to me. That's really not even help. That's just somebody imposing their standards on you, right? I could give an example, but I don't want to be too controversial. So tonight I'll be super controversial another night when I'm not so tired and I'm in a more surly mood. This thing is going on forever anyway. But so I think it's always been the elite. So first of all, I mean, that's like, to me, that kind of exposes one level of the diabolical nature of saying that the reason we have racial tensions is because of slavery, or white people, or this, or, I mean, it's like, that's not even the problem. That's like somebody that needs a Band-Aid because they cut their foot and you give them a hot water heater to put on their head. It's like, that's kind of evil, that's a special kind of evil, right? And in this particular sense, in the sense that the prescription for a problem is a ill-diagnosed prescription, right? In this sense, I mean, it goes much deeper than that, because our real problems I believe, are, like Dwight Eisenhower warned us against, was a military-industrial complex, was companies that profit from war. They have a vested interest in promoting war, right? And so you have that generational, and a lot of these guys are the elites, by the way, because multi-billion-dollar government contracts, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, so we're saying it's white people, but wait a minute, no, it's the war machine. It's not white people, or it's human trafficking, Chinese people trafficking Chinese people, Americans trafficking Americans, Europeans trafficking Europeans, Africans trafficking Africans. It's human trafficking. It's not white people hating black people. I mean, that's, you see, it's like, what is it like? I mean, how do we really put words to all this about how diabolical it is and why it's diabolical to run around talking? I mean, you run into this. You run into this principle of an abyss, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere, but in politics, because this notion that white people are evil and white people owe black people, I mean, as if anybody who owes anybody anything is something that can be determined by the color of a person's skin on either side is even rational or possible. I mean, that's not even, I was talking to an elderly lady at an event I went to this past weekend, and she was telling me that her father had a really hard time because when they got off the boat from Ireland, everywhere he went there were signs that said Italians and Irish need not apply. So, I mean, what are we going to say now? Are we going to say that French Americans owe Irish Americans because they discriminated against Irish Americans? I mean, you say this is like, to say that this notion that a certain class of people that have a certain color of skin owe a certain class of people who have a certain color of skin something on the basis of the color of the skin. The word stupid doesn't really suffice to describe how intellectually depraved and debased it is. The only way I can think, I mean, stupid only takes you like 10% of the way of the distance that you need to go to sufficiently explain how intellectually debased it is. The only way I know how to describe it is to say that it's an abyss. Because when you peel away the first two layers of this argument that this color people owes this color people something because of something that this color people did to that color people 200 years ago, and it's like, well, wait a minute, and you start peeling it. You peel away first couple layers of this argument. It's like, wait a minute, there's nothing here. I mean, we could sit here for the next 2 years and talk about why it's wrong, but let's just cut to the chase and say that there's literally nothing here. It's just a dark, stinking, like mist-filled hole of nothing that just smells like death. It's just nothing. It's just an abyss. It's like hell. It's like a portal to hell, basically. And that's the only way that I can think to describe it that even comes close to capturing the essence of what it is. And this is 30 minutes. My phone's going to shut off. So I'm going to stop this and start another one because I'm trying to be more of a grown